Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Welcome back.
Out here on the gravel.
You know how it is.
This episode is being recorded on a Monday.
It's being recorded Monday morning. Coming out real early for you guys. I'm just hard cutting the music because yesterday was a long day for both of us.
Yeah. It was a good... I think I was treated, though. I was treated to, arguably, in my opinion, the best race of the season.
Oh, absolutely.
That I unfortunately did not get to watch live, given I was working.
That was my thing, is like, oh, the 2 o'clock race, 1 o'clock race time star was amazing. But, like, I'm going to be real with y'all. It was kind of inconvenient. I need these races at like 8 a.m. so we can record, and then...
Yeah, it's so funny because I know a lot of, American-based fans, or just honestly Western Hemisphere-based fans are, not super big fans of these early start times to these races. And I'm personally a huge fan of being able to just get up in the morning, make a cup of coffee, sit down and watch the race, and it doesn't really eat any time out of the middle of my day. It's something I've always liked about, the series being generally based around European time. I think it just works out for how I go about my day. So, yeah, having these middle of the day races, they're cool until I realize they mess with all of my plans.
Everything I need to do is now backdoor and importance. So we'll start off this week with some of the second thing that I sent to you this week in our doc, which kind of is old news with the race kind of happening. But Helmut Marko said to Formula Uno that Red Bull could struggle at the Canadian Grand Prix. Furthermore, he went on to say the problem starts in the simulator, which signaled that the car was going over curbs perfectly. Simply put, that means the simulator and reality don't correlate. We are optimistic that we can find out why the simulator produces data that does not correspond to reality, but Montreal could be a difficult weekend for us.
First of all, that comment doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't, dude. Like, I read that like 4 times, and I was like,
yeah,
okay, I'm just gonna put it down because. But it is also Formula Uno, so it's being translated.
That's fair.
But yeah,
I mean, I guess I understand the comment about if it's saying in the simulator that everything is being done absolutely perfectly, there could be an issue because I guess a simulator is not real life.
Well, that's my thing. Is like, what if they programmed the curbs wrong?
Well, also, I feel like it's important to think about how, the simulator doesn't translate into real life in the sense that there's always other conditions, on a racetrack that you can't perfectly replicate in a simulator. So to see that it's going, to see that everything's happening perfectly cut and dry in the simulator, I think that actually does signal that there could be something, of issue, because I feel like there's always stuff to work on, I guess. So to not have that, I guess I could kind of see where his comment's coming from, but I'm struggling to make an excuse for him right now. It's just very weird.
This concludes the old news segment, and I'm just going to give myself one of these because that news doesn't matter, and we'll talk about that later. Oh, we don't need that again. First piece of an actual important news that happened this week starts off with Perez and Red Bull extending his contract till at least 2026, which, if we remember... last week? We were talking 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That they rumored him a 1-year contract and he counteroffered. So it seems like he has worked.
How it worked? Don't even get me started, because we're on the classic section of the season where we are on tracks that actually have human rights. And Perez has been absolutely awful since we went to Europe.
Scored 4 points in the last 3 races.
Yeah, 4 points. Come on. I just think what I've come to realize with them continuously re-signing Perez is that he brings in a lot of Mexican sponsorship money that really covers his contract and covers Max Verstappen's contract as well. And I think Red Bull also love the fact that Sergio Perez poses absolutely zero threat to Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the dynamic that they want in the team. bringing a Yuki Tsunoda into the team, that could be an issue. I mean, if you put Yuki Tsunoda and Sergio Perez in the same car right now, who do you personally think would do better? I genuinely think Yuki Tsunoda could outperform Sergio Perez in a Red Bull. Daniel Ricciardo, that's another conversation. I still have no idea where he is. But I think they love the dynamic of just having one driver play a full support role to their main driver and just pick up the pieces when that main driver isn't there on like an off weekend or something like that. It's horrible to watch as a fan of the sport, but I guess when it comes down to a pure competitiveness, in the sense of, just doing the absolute best thing to win the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' title at the same time, it's obviously worked for them over the past few years. But, for, every single fan that wants to see, an inter-team battle for a world championship at a team that's kind of been dominating. Kind of
like Mercedes was back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, Nico and Lewis was different.
Back in the day, quote unquote.
That was different. That was good. But we're in the same, obviously it's kind of coming to an end now, but, we're in that same era of massive domination by one team. And to see that car, what's the word? Set up around one driver and
perfectly be built.
Suited for one built for Max Verstappen.
Suited is, I think, the term you were looking for.
Yeah, but to also see a second driver that is not to the level of Max Verstappen, any challenges out the window. So does Perez truly deserve a contract extension? No.
I mean, dude, that's the next thing I have is he's been out qualified by Logan Sargent 6 times this year.
No, not this year, but since Logan Sargent started racing in F1.
Okay. I thought it was this year.
I found it so funny to see that, Alex Albon's out-qualified Logan Sargent in every single GP that they've raced in, but Logan Sargent has out-qualified Sergio Perez 20% of the time. I think that's crazy. And it shows the level of inconsistency that comes with Sergio Perez. He's not inconsistent enough to cost them the Constructors' Championship, but he's inconsistent enough to never pose a threat to Max.
I mean, we say that now, but based on how competitive Canada was, I can't say that with him in the second seat that Constructors' title is safe. You have McLaren right around the corner. You have Ferrari. It was an off week for them this week. We knew it was going to be an off week.
I didn't actually think it was going to be an off week.
They said that They said that they were going to, do the best they can. But Canada has never been a great track for them.
That's true. And I said that. It's so funny. I had a table at work ask me if how I thought the Ferrari boys were going to do and everything, and I said there's absolutely no chance either of them finish on the podium this week. I stupidly said that Charles Leclerc would uphold his, finishing in the top 4 streak every single race, but
that he finishes.
Now it's that he finishes, but I knew it would be like an off week. I still thought they would be decent, but it just, I don't know. It was just an absolute cluster mind screwing this weekend with the Ferrari strategy and that car.
Dude, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
We'll get to that all later. Other drivers that have resigned or rumored to have get an extension include Daniel Ricciardo at VCARB. Sorry, it's early here, folks.
Yes, it is.
Until 2025 with the end goal of getting into RB in 2026. For the internals of VCARB, this gets messy. With Liam supposedly getting a seat in 2025, that was, promised last year. And especially after he took over for Daniel.
For that 5-race stint last year.
And he absolutely killed it. So,
out qualifying both Red Bulls in Singapore, scoring points, that's a very tough task.
Yeah, and Christian Horner is the one that wants Daniel at that team. And I don't know if it's this, sentimental attachment or just believing that oh, he could come back to form like the old Daniel that I know. It's like
it's just too inconsistent.
And yeah, and we'll get more into like what happened this week with him in a second, but Marco is the one that wants younger drivers. And this becomes really, really messy in the sense of, okay, now you have, Yuki also got an extension. We'll get that out of the way right now. So both of them are confirmed to 2025. This becomes an issue when thinking of, okay, now what does Liam do?
I'd leave.
And that's where I have is in the Yuki extension post I saw. He was quoted saying that Liam is at every race and he's, in contact with them, yada, yada, XYZ. If we don't, there is a clause with Lawson. If we don't offer him an active seat, he's free for other teams. So he's not locked, like how kind of we all thought was the initial case of like, oh, he's going to have to stay at VCARB, Red Bull, just till a seat opens up. But there's a clause where he can go if he doesn't get that seat. Now, do Audi or Williams? Thank you for making me do more work, by the way.
No, I didn't say anything. I was going to say funny enough, and I cut myself off, so it sounded like I just dropped an F-bomb. I don't know. Like, I would leave if I was Liam Lawson, but also
the car is decent.
The car is good now. I don't want to say good, but for a midfield car, it's like decent. Right where it needs to be. And I think the current Sauber is a piece of trash, and I wouldn't want to go over there. Like, I'd go to somewhere like Williams. That would be really cool. Like if Alex Albon went to Mercedes, and then you had Carlos Sainz and Liam Lawson in a Williams next year, that would be insane.
Sorry to burst your bubble, but...
Oh, I know the bubble's getting bursted. That's okay. But, yeah, I think Liam Lawson's kind of just getting screwed over by this false Daniel Ricciardo hype train that I am completely over at this point.
I mean, we've mentioned this twice. Let's just get into this now with Gilles Villeneuve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend he was like, what are your thoughts on Daniel? And he had his own tangent of, he's inconsistent. It's been 5 years. He's been complaining about the car. They're doing everything for him to make sure he thinks he's doing okay, and then he's doing nothing, essentially. And it seemed like Daniel kind of took that personally going into the race yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And, he qualified 5th?
Stuck it on P5 in qualifying, ended up finishing the race in P8 after a crazy
4 points.
race.
That's
4 points is 4 points.
That's like 25% of almost 20-ish, 15% of VCARB's points right now. So, I mean, he also is more experienced in the rain. I will kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, but you also have to think Jacques Villeneuve's, point on Daniel Ricciardo, his entire tangent was so incredibly valid.
Do you want me to try to pull it up?
If you could try and pull it up while I kind of yap about it for a minute, yes. I think, a lot of fans of the sport who are not as educated kind of came out and and said like, who is this guy with the microphone who is, spouting off all this untrue BS about Daniel Ricciardo? And it's like, this guy's a Formula One world champion. He's an Indy 500 winner, like all that kind of stuff. But you also have to, take it with a grain of salt. Take your love for Daniel Ricciardo out of the equation. It's a lot of cut and dry fact with what Jack said. He's been unbelievably inconsistent since his McLaren stint. I would almost say that his best part of his career was his HRT and Toro Rosso days, because even at Red Bull, he was going up against a washed Sebastian Vettel. He lost to Daniel Kvyat in Red Bull. If you even knew, Daniel Kvyat raced an entire year at Red Bull against Daniel Ricciardo and beat him.
I didn't know he beat him.
And then he was getting absolutely outclassed by a young Max Verstappen. So, like, you really need to look at it objectively. Daniel Ricciardo is a great driver, and I don't want to say what he's done has been overrated or anything like that. But I think at this stage in his career, he's definitely way more overhyped than I believe he should be. I think his time has very much come to an end. Maybe Chuck Checo in the VCARB. I'm kidding. But no, I think it's time for Daniel Ricciardo to cut it quits and do something else. I know he's super into doing media stuff outside of the sport. He's of course a great personality. But I think his time in an F1 car is done.
I mean, I genuinely can't tell because he'll have a crappy weekend and then he'll have a weekend like this where, it's like, oh, he's back, but he's never going to be back.
I was going to say, how many of these he's backs are we going to get? Like, I'm very over it. And it's a wasted seat. Just like how Logan Sargent's Williams seat is a wasted seat. I personally believe Guan Yu Zhou's Sauber seat is a wasted seat right now.
I think I got the best that we're going to get with this YouTube video. So
yeah.
Why is he still in F1?
This is what Jacques Villeneuve said about
we're
Daniel
hearing
Ricciardo.
The same thing now for the last 4 or 5 years. We have to make the car better for him, poor him. Sorry, it's been 5 years of that. No, you're in F1. Maybe you make that effort for Lewis Hamilton, who's won multiple championships. You don't make that effort for a driver that can't cut it. If you can't cut it, go home. There's someone else to take your place. That's how it's always been in racing. It's the pinnacle of the sport. There's no reason to keep going and to keep finding excuses. And you all talk about that first season or first
This
two
is
seasons.
what I love.
He was beating a Vettel that was burnt out, that was trying to invent things with the car to go win and just making a mess of his weekends. And then he was beating for half a season Verstappen when Verstappen was 18 years old, just starting. Then that was it. He stopped beating anyone after that.
It's true.
Fact.
It's true, which is like the worst part about it. But like, I don't know, man. I think give him this extension. I think he'll maybe get a reserve seat for 2026 to see the specs and see how he does with them. But after that, I genuinely don't see him in F1 anymore. And, he can go to IndyCar. He could go to WEC. He could go to Rally. I mean, there's so many other options for him that he's
if he wants to keep racing.
If he wants to keep racing, it's like take a page out of Alonso's book, man. Like,
well, I feel like with Ricciardo, all he wants to do is F1. To me, it feels like that is the only discretion of motorsport he's interested in.
It makes sense because why else would you keep coming back?
Yeah.
So I don't know. We already talked about Yuki getting a year extension. Oliver Behrman will be driving for Haas, confirmed in the next 2 weeks. I'm calling it now.
Yeah, I've been seeing so much go around about this.
Like, it's...
A lot of places are reporting this now, and I'm not going to be surprised if it happens. Haas loves to promote young talent.
Young drivers, yes.
And I'm completely for this. I think, you if you look at the F2 results right now, Oliver Behrman's kind of nowhere this season, but that's not his focus right now. It's all of his reserve driver work, his simulator work, for Ferrari and for Haas and all that kind of stuff. And they're very locked in. I mean, they're putting all of this effort into him at these teams, so they want to reward that. And he is a very, accoladed driver, I guess. He absolutely deserves a chance in F1, even if it's at a team like Haas. So I'm completely for that.
I'm loving it.
Can't be as bad as Nikita Mazepin or Logan Sargent has been. So
it was reported by Total Motorsport in conversation with Alex Albon that, quote, I think Mercedes time and time again when it comes to these regulation changes, they seem to be one step ahead of the rivals. Not to say I don't think other teams will do a good job, but I think it's at least a safe bet. When you look at maybe the other midfield teams who are bringing in new power units, I'm sure they're going to put a lot of money to hit the ground running.
Absolute factual statement.
Yeah, and this kind of goes into the fact of, Williams might not be a bad car, quote unquote, in, 2-3 years with the new Mercedes engines coming out and with
And you also have to just think about how much money they have been pouring into their facilities and their personnel for the past few years to really build to the fact that they want to have a very long-standing future in the sport and excel in the sport in the next 5-10 years. And they've really been working super hard towards that. And that's why they've had these issues like the chassis shortage, all that kind of stuff, because it's not because they're a poverty franchise. It's because they are literally pouring as much money as they can into the back of house to develop and research
for the longevity
all that kind
of the
stuff.
team.
Of course. So those are, I guess, sacrifices you have to make right now when your pockets aren't as deep as a Mercedes or a Ferrari. So I do respect what they're doing. And Alex's comment on the fact that Mercedes always knocks it out of the park with their power units. Maybe they don't get every regulation set perfect. Of course, 2022 regs were horrible for them. But their engine has always been phenomenal. So I'm excited to see how the Mercedes engines work in the 2026 regs.
Yeah, to speed through some of the next few things, we had rain in the forecast for Canada, and oh boy, did it not disappoint.
So good.
Montreal 2024, from what I saw, it was supposed to be the first ever trophy designed by AI. I don't know if it actually was, but then I made a whole rant about how the trophies shouldn't be made by AI.
It shouldn't be made by AI.
I don't think it's like a wild take. But
Guys, it's taking all of the human delicacy and nuance in design. Call me weird for liking how beautiful some of the other trophies in sports are, or even some of the other race trophies.
SMH my head. My favorite saying of all time online.
SMH my head is crazy.
Jack Doohan drove an FP1 instead of Ocon this week for Alpine. He'll continue to do that because Ocon's not going to that team again. So I think they're going to prep the driver as much as he can before, he's getting ready to come into the seat.
Yeah.
Hyundai.
We also know Jack Doohan only got 2 laps in Canada because he had some issue with the car. He got 1 lap in the dry, 1 lap in the wet, and he was nowhere near fast enough to set a competitive time in either lap. He just got 2 parade laps around the track, and that was it.
That's goofy. Hyundai is rumored to be researching into joining F1 by buying an existing team.
Yeah, that blew my mind.
So this is where I tell every listener listening to this to go back to last week's show where I rant about what's Andretti's supposed to do when the FIA told them to, buy an existing team instead of trying to create a team.
Yeah.
It's generally just becomes the exact scenario of who do they buy? Unless
nobody's selling.
Nobody's selling. I mean, maybe Aston Martin sells. I don't see that happening, though.
I was thinking maybe a Haas.
I mean, we talked about Haas. We talked about Williams. We talked about...
I don't think any of them are selling.
Audi's not selling. They just got in. I don't think they're going to turn around and be like, actually. It doesn't make sense. So go check out that rant because it was a great rant.
It was.
Quick shout out to all the listeners for...
Well, it's just the FIA just hates Andretti Autosport with a burning passion.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. American company versus American company. Make it make sense. But
at least we got Kimi Antonelli getting more practice in the F1 cars.
And every single time that this happens going forward, I'm just not going to talk about it because he's been getting practice every single week, I feel like.
Yeah.
And cool, he's getting practice. So is Oliver Behrman. And so are all these other
Liam
drivers.
Lawson and Jack Doohan.
Mick Schumacher. Until we can guarantee that he's going to be driving for Mercedes, which shout out the race. If you check out their Instagram, of the seats that are currently available still on the grid. If you check out the Mercedes, I know I sent this to you.
Oh, yeah, George Russell.
George Russell is still in the second seat behind a to be announced, which I find hilarious that they're just going to put Kimi Antonelli right in that one seat.
Yeah, that's not happening. George Russell will be the number 1 driver at that team next year.
Nope. Wrong.
Unless Carlos Sainz goes there.
Nope, he's not going there.
Did you know?
Back in, I don't know when they did this, but
I think it was
the
the
90s.
90s.
I was just saying 90s because I saw like, was it Mansell?
Yeah.
But they used to have raft races in the little like Olympic pond next to in the track.
Yep.
We need that back now because it would be an absolute gold mine. I want to see Valtteri Bottas put together, rafts with bicycles and then they bike across.
I don't know what like spurred this idea to have these raft races in the pond.
I love it. It's fun.
It is. No, I love like little fun events like that.
Red Bull had the soapbox racing in Montreal with the VCARB and Red Bull drivers, and it was cool. It was a little gimmicky. It was obviously like a paid sponsored thing.
Do you think this would give off gimmicky then? Gimmicky vibes?
If it's an ad, if it's just one big ad for, something, yes, it would be.
Yeah, like I know, F1 has their series where, they have like Grill the Grid and, all that kind of stuff. And of course, those aren't advertisements since they're sponsored by F1 themselves.
So make it like that.
This would be.
But just make it something fun. Give the drivers like 4 hours to kind of decompress and not really stress. Give the fans a little extra something to go and, just witness for fun.
Yeah, I feel like people would I feel like if I was a driver in that scenario, I feel like I would enjoy that unless I had a really stressful weekend.
Plus, I want to see Zach Brown and Fred Vasseur and Christian Horner.
Fred Vasseur.
Dude, all of them would be so funny. Just like sitting in a raft doing nothing. Like I see Zach Brown like manning the whole.
I was gonna say you love one guy doing all the work and the other.
I just imagine Zach Brown like the Delaware painting of George Washington where he's just standing.
Yeah, 100%.
He's like, we must charge.
Maybe they do a little battle in the water as well. Last one to sink the boat loses,
dude,
or wins.
Yeah, that would be fun. Charles is new race engineer from 2 races ago. I think they changed him.
Brian Bosey
said that representing this company in the whole of Italy in the highest category of motorsport is a great source of pride for me, and even more so having the opportunity to work alongside an exceptional driver like Charles.
This relationship is getting off to a wonderful start.
It seems like the start of a toxic relationship.
No.
You had such a high and then such a low.
No. This is just an off week.
Okay.
I think off the track they're going to have a great relationship. But so did
off
Xavi.
the track. Yeah, so like, what are you getting at? I think they're going to be friends off the track. Yeah.
Okay,
but he's
Brian Bosey's a little fanboy. Give him his time in the spotlight. Let him fangirl to the extent that we all want to about Charles Leclerc.
More and more rumors circulate with Sainz going to Williams, which may happen because there's less seats. But go 20 minutes back to the Alex bit where I said that car might not be that bad in 2 years. It could be a smart move, but I don't think that's what he wants to do.
Dude, just the Williams, being a title contending car in the next few years. If that happened and, Sainz made that move and then beat Alex, I'd feel so bad.
It's going to be so wild. We have the biggest piece of news that we saved for last. The new specs for
F2026 regs were released this past week and very in depth.
I was going to say, I got the key details. Shout out Instagram, F1, they're the best. They just post everything about the new specs and everything that we need. And it's very easy for me to copy it over and, just break it down for you guys.
And we'll break it down quick.
I was going to say.
So we can get into this race.
Better hybrid engines with increased electrical power. They have 300% increase in electrical power. There's double in energy recovery in braking versus 2022. There's a manual override mode for a boost of energy.
DRS no longer exists.
It's
essentially like the IndyCar push-to-pass system, where you'll press a button down on the steering wheel and you'll get those extra, 5, 6, 7 kilometers an hour. It's still to be used in the 1 second window.
Like in the DRS zones.
In the DRS zones. I'm wondering if,
there'll be mom zones now?
Something like that.
Mom zones? Manual override.
Mum zones. Mum zones.
And he comes into the mum zone.
He comes into... Never mind.
Jesus. Yeah,
Okay.
no, we're done with that.
Anyways, so... Yeah, I think that it'll be a cool system. Maybe they restructure how DRS zones work with a boost in electrical energy instead of a reduction of drag. You know, maybe the car will act differently because of that. So I'm really excited to see how something like that will work. But then, of course, 100% sustainable fuel in the hybrid engines. This is something they've been working towards for a long time. The absolute best change that all of us wanted was lighter and smaller cars.
Yeah, brother. Lighter and smaller in quotation marks because it's now 1.9 meters wide when it used to be 2.
That's a lot, but that's still a big difference.
That is.
It'll be a noticeable change.
It'll be a noticeable change, but a lot of people are saying that this is a candy bar size like change.
It is, but also you have to understand these cars are going to be the smallest that they've been since like 2016.
Okay, so that's good.
Yeah, losing 30 kilos.
Yeah, new max weight of 768 kilograms. The wheelbase is now down from 3.6 to 3.4. You got downforce reduced by 30% and drag by 55%.
So they're going to be slippy.
Yes.
They're going to be very slippy cars.
But then you have smaller front tires by 25 millimeters and back tires by 30 millimeters. And then there's the Active Aero.
Yeah, Active Aero.
Which this is the thing that I think a lot of us are most hesitant about and questioning.
A lot of teams don't like it either.
And I don't know if a lot of drivers love it, to be fair, either. But there's 2 modes. There's Z mode and X mode. Z mode alters wings for drivers to get better cornering speeds.
Yeah.
So a lot more drag compared to it. But they get the ability to get more grip in those corners, get more speed. Then there's X mode, which less downforce on the car, but higher top speed in exchange. So it's a very, very nuanced system, but it's going to be very weird having another thing to do on the car, if that makes sense.
Also worried you get like a Lewis Hamilton 2021 Baku moment where you accidentally flip a switch and turn on the X mode in a corner and you just fly off the track.
Like, there's got to be a way to lock it, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or it's got to be in a place where it can't be mistakenly pushed, really, because it is such a detrimental change in the car, and especially at a corner. I don't know how that would work, but
100 millimeter narrower front wings with that Active Aero. And if you also saw the pictures, there's like a new set of flaps that come off the outside of the end plate. I think that is going to play into that Active Aero. I don't know how teams will interpret that, but
and then a 2-element rear wing with no wheel arches on the front of the car anymore either.
I mean, the wheel arches weren't really a big thing for me. Those only existed for a couple of years.
Yeah, I
didn't get close to them.
No, I don't think anyone's going to miss them.
Yeah.
And then safety, better side protection, lights to indicate the electrical status of the car, and revised 2-stage front impact structure to improve secondary impacts.
Because, those crash and any open wheel race car, those safety cells are really only
meant for that first one.
Yeah. If you hit another concrete wall after that first impact,
or a car hits you if you're on the track, which is what a lot of these drivers are scared of.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Maybe going up Eau Rouge, smacking the wall, and then coming back on the track.
Jack Villeneuve. Was it Jack Villeneuve and his teammate that took Eau Rouge flat out and both crashed their cars?
Not that I know of off the top of my head. Was this in WEC?
No. This was in F1 back in the day.
Oh, I can't remember then off the top of my head.
I believe it was both Williams, and they both were made a bet to each other that they would take Eau Rouge flat out.
Wait, I remember having this conversation. I do remember having this conversation.
Yeah. Anyways, practice.
It's race time, baby.
It's race time. We'll scurry through this moment for you, but for practice, the biggest highlights from the week.
Yeah,
so
big highlights from practice. The thing that I actually watched, I actually watched most of the practice.
You got to watch some hail.
Yeah, but it was. I guess the biggest highlight was just the scale of the rain forecast throughout the weekend actually showing up for once. Because Raven and I were talking about this, at Monday or Tuesday last week, where, oh my goodness, it's going to be raining all weekend, and then classic rain, and it doesn't rain at all.
It's so annoying.
But no, it showed up this weekend and interfered with, most of the practice sessions, and it completely curtailed any meaningful, dry weather prep. So it got us into this weird state of we don't really know who's the best coming out of practice. But I think one thing that we noticed very quickly was that the Mercedes were on fire. Out of nowhere, they kind of looked like the best car on the grid. Maybe not in race pace, but definitely over a single lap. They looked incredible this weekend. And of course, we all know what happened. But they were really showing a genuine threat to the, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren trio at the top of the pack right now. I thought Ferrari personally looked decent in practice as well. Leclerc was even complimenting the Ferrari's abilities in both dry and wet conditions after Friday. That obviously wasn't to be. Absolute crap show that we had. But then we had a lot of spins, small incidents with all the rain. You had Joe smacking the wall. In first practice, you had the turn 8-9 chicane looking like a splash pad with everybody going off the side
Wasn't
of that.
it on practice too where the pit exit was like flooded and they had a drain, like an electric pump in the water
I believe so, yeah.
where they were like, don't pit for a while we figure this out. I don't know. I found that just
They took on
really
a lot
real.
of rain.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad because it was the first time I think since I've started watching that I've really got to see the wet tires used at all.
Yeah, I also can't believe somebody actually used the wet tires today.
I mean, we'll get that. Well, yesterday. Caught you there.
I did say today.
It is Monday. But I don't know. The wet tires, I really liked. It was very exciting. The inters, too, were...
Yeah.
it was weird seeing, the matched qualifying time of being 1 minute, 12 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But then, the first 3-5 laps in the race were like averaging 1 minute and 35.
Yeah, which is close to like 25
I was
seconds.
to say 23 seconds is wild for the rain. And it's like you saw Charles when he switched to hards in the end trying to beat the rain. We had a little earthquake there. I don't know what that was, but it doesn't make any sense to me. So,
but yeah, we're
that's
ahead of
my
ourselves a little bit into qualifying, our actual little qualifying breakdown. To me, this has been the greatest qualifying session of the season, with the highlight for honestly the entire weekend of racing being the second ever dead heat for pole position. Dead heat being the pole sitter setting the exact same qualifying time as the man in P2. The only other time this ever happened in the history of F1 was at Jerez in 1977. That was the European GP that year, with a three-way tie between Jacques Villeneuve, Michael Schumacher, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, all setting a time of, if I know off the top of my head, 1 minute, 27 seconds and 12 thousandths of a second.
I believe you're right. But my thing about that, too, is those were set in 2 Williams and a Ferrari.
Yeah.
So just like Williams used to be something. Okay, that's my
I just think it's so crazy that we've had dead heats before. I won't say dead heats, but because dead heat is obviously for pole, but just we've had drivers set the same times. Sometimes,
but never for pole.
But it's only happened twice when it comes to pole position, and it's so incredible. To see that happen, to see that Max Verstappen did set the same time as George Russell, but G. Russ happily and thankfully set it before Max did.
I like that rule too, where
it makes
whoever
sense.
sets the time first gets pole.
Yeah,
it genuinely it's like, okay, you did it first.
Yeah, Perez came back to clap back at all of his haters this week with back-to-back Q1 exits after extending his contract, which really infuriated any human being who wanted to see somebody in the seat that could actually, challenge Max Verstappen. Back-to-back P16 Q1 exits is horrible. And, I sat there laughing at Sergio Perez for, 5 minutes. I was texting Raven laughing my butt off, and then I was quickly karma'd by seeing both Ferraris get knocked out in Q2 after, not being able to hook one up and getting awful Ferrari strategy of not putting a fresh set of soft tires on in the second part of qualifying.
Why would you use old softs in a somewhat dry track.
Yeah, that had me really peeved. But then I love the word peeved. I love my P words. But anyways, both VCARBs made it through to Q3. I thought that was really important. And I think Ricciardo's P5 qualifying really did go unnoticed to a lot of people.
Well, I think it was because he was being slammed by Villeneuve.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what else you can do in that kind of situation, but he did everything he could, and, he stuck at P5.
Mm-hmm.
But
both Aston Martins qualified well as well.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're all good.
You had them qualifying P7, P8. Then Lewis Hamilton. Also, Lewis Hamilton was nowhere. He was like, him and George were bossing qualifying the entire way through. And then Lewis Hamilton just fell off a cliff in the second part of Q3. I know the Q3 times were also on average like 4/10 slower than the Q2 times. It was 112.000 in Q3, but George Russell had like a 111.7 in Q2. But yeah, qualifying was phenomenal. That was easily the best qualifying session of the year.
And going to the race after lights out, holy Haas.
No incidents into the first corner, the first lap as well. Oh,
you're wrong. Sadly,
you're all right. I'm wrong.
Perez killed Gasly in the opening corner, and both were fine. Continued the race afterwards, but
yes,
yeah. Haas was the only one that had the balls to start on wet tires and trust the rain a little bit, and it showed off for the first 12 laps of the race, where they combined 17 overtakes in those first 12 laps.
Yeah, dude. It was so funny because being at work, I ran to the bathroom to watch the first lap of the race, and I see everything. Okay, Magnussen starting P14, Hulkenberg starting P18. I take the quickest peek at my phone 5 minutes later. Kevin Magnussen is challenging for the podium positions 5 laps into this race. I was furious just that I couldn't sit down and actually watch it.
It was really entertaining, and it was just great racing all around. Everyone kept it really clean for the most part, and I feel like if they knew they couldn't take a corner, they would just do the smart thing and not push the car and go off track limits, take whatever penalty you're going to get for it, which I don't think they even issued any, just because it is so slippery out there.
Yeah.
So they got a little more leeway in that kind of room. But
yeah, I think the thing that sucked as well at the beginning of this race was just the fact that the Haas boys had put in all of this work, specifically Kevin Magnussen, and then he got botched with a nearly 10-second pit stop.
It was bad. Even Sully pointed that out to me, where he was like, that was a long pit stop just for tires. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right, dude.
Yeah, I think it came up as
9.6?
Something like that, yeah. And it completely ruined everything. I think he came back out in P14. He would have come back out in P8.
Mm-hmm. It was rough.
But yeah, that ruined the race.
This was a battle between Max, Lando, and George after the rain kind of started to dry out. This is the first time that I've started watching that multiple teams have had a real, solid chance at winning a race, I would say. I feel like there's always 2 teams that are kind of battling out. For a while, it's just Max running away with the lead, but I can see why this is so exciting, guys.
We went from Max Verstappen running away with it to now 2 teams and now 3 week in, week out challenging for the win.
Logan spun out and retired with the safety car.
Lap 25, baby. And
it ruined Lando's chances of winning.
Well, it was so
100%.
crazy because Lando had overtaken Max, he had overtaken George Russell on lap 22. And then, Max slipped through on George as well. And then in those 3-4 laps, Lando built up a 9-second gap to Max.
3 laps is wild. I mean, he was down 8 seconds, and then next time I checked, he was at 2.5, and then he was fighting for the position.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is doing, but the McLaren is looking good in those middle stints of the race.
Yeah, but Logan absolutely ruined Lando's race by throwing it into the wall. I feel bad. It was so wet, and I don't want to, harp on Logan because other people made the same mistakes, Perez and Sainz as well, But I guess it's just a safety car helping Max sucks.
It's never a fun feeling to see. But what the hell was Ferrari and Charles doing? Like, literally, what the hell? They're like, okay, rain in 15 minutes. We're going to switch to some hards. You're going to stick it out and be fine. And
I think they were just trying to get some in-season testing done.
Brother, what a terrible decision. That pissed me off. I don't know.
It was so funny.
It's just
because
like, and then
they immediately box him after for the intermediates, and he comes out right in front of Max Verstappen, and people are like, "Oh my goodness, Leclerc leads Max Verstappen in the Canadian GP."
Well, apparently, he had a power unit issue where he lost like 80 horsepower for 15 laps. So
and then they ended up retiring the car. Yeah.
That was never fun. But Perez decided to really show his worth and his contract extension by spinning it into the wall before Sainz does the exact same thing in the same spot and
one
takes
lap
out
later.
one lap later and takes out Albon as well. All three of them retire, and yeah, it was unfortunate.
Speaking about Alex Albon,
Speaking about Perez too, he got a 3-place penalty.
yes, Perez did get a 3-place grid penalty for Spain by, just for the fact that he was driving with that rear wing. That broken rear wing back to the pit lane, that's completely unsafe, and that is a fully deserved penalty. But back to Alex Albon, completing one of the greatest overtakes I've ever seen in the sport. Beautiful. I can't even lie.
In between two cars.
He literally was like zigzagging through the cars into the chicane at the Wall of Champions.
I believe the kids on the street called it swimming.
That's definitely winning overtake of the month. We don't even need to go to the Spanish GP.
We don't need it. We can stop racing.
Yeah, no, but that was incredible. You don't see moves like that very often, and I was very impressed.
George and Oscar were called to the stewards for the contact they had in the final chicane.
George was over the limit, and that's the problem.
And that gives us to our first top 5 or not 5 in 3 weeks.
Top 5 or not 5.
All right, we're going to speed through this
as fast as humanly possible.
I'm going to intercut between the two of us.
So we're going to go point for point?
We're going to point for point. You're starting us off. Go. Oh, that was the wrong one.
I thought that was going to
That was
right
funny, though.
Music.
That was funny, though. That worked. All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
Top 5 or not 5. Albon's double overtake on the two others. Come on, that was obviously going to be the number 1.
Haas dominating the rain, brother. That was great.
Just rain, period. I love a weather-affected race.
Mercedes resurgence. Lewis, another world championship.
Second ever dead heat in the history of F1.
It's great. We love it. Charles,
not
5. Charles and Ferrari strategy. What are you doing?
Perez at tracks with human rights just do not go well together.
Logan Sargent trying to lose his seat as fast as humanly possible.
He's gone. Unlucky safety car timing for Lando and George really gifted Max that win.
And McLaren pit strategy.
Yeah,
it was just
Lando
unfortunate.
had multiple times where he could have pitted with the rest, and unfortunately they'd hang him out for an extra lap and it would cost him the position.
Oh, dude, we killed that. We still have like half the song, so I'm just going to put that down and let that play
now,
out.
How did we used to be so awful at that?
Well, we just had a lot longer things, I think.
I think we would just talk on them too long.
True. But no F2, correct?
No F2 this week.
WRC, we got Poland in 2 weeks.
Whack, we have Le Mans this weekend.
Let's go.
You have no idea.
I graduate, and then we got Le Mans on too.
Dude, I'm going to be
a busy
glued to my computer screen.
I'm going to be staring at my phone during graduation.
We had IndyCar raced at Road America this past weekend out in Wisconsin, one of my favorite tracks in the United States.
We're going to go to one of that race.
Yeah, I would
soon.
love to go to Road America.
It's pretty close.
Not like a super crazy weekend. It was Will Power's first race win in over 2 years in IndyCar, and for a multiple series champion and race winner like him not having a win for that long is crazy. Mm-hmm. But I guess the other big point of the weekend was it was a super wet qualifying session, so qualifying was unbelievably entertaining for that race. And then just the crazy first lap collision that happened as well. You had Marcus Armstrong send it into the back of the pole sitter, spin himself out, spin the both of them out, and then you had somebody crash into the back of Colton Herta trying to avoid, the contact ahead. It was crazy just to see, it usually implodes from the middle of the grid. So to see the entire front of the grid die.
Implode.
At the beginning of the race was crazy, but a lot of really good overtakes. I thought it was a phenomenal weekend from Romain Grosjean as well. He started, I think, P14 for the race, ended up sticking at P7 with a lot of really nice overtakes. He had a fantastic one on Scott Dixon in the kink at turn 4, I believe. But it was a really good race. Rain has just been playing a part in every single category of racing that I've seen this past weekend. And it always produces the bits. I love it.
All right. For MotoGP this week, we have no MotoGP, but we do have something else that's happening. The Isle of Man TT, which I have known a lot about just because of how world-renowned it is. If you know anything about bikes, you can...
Isle of Man.
Isle of Man TT, yeah. And it is on the Isle of Man, thank you. No, it's the most dangerous racing event that people can do. And it is incredibly entertaining. It's incredibly thrill-seeking for the drivers. But I just want to, really appreciate these guys putting their lives out on the line for a race. Like, dude, these bikes go like 200-300 miles per hour.
I'm taking a peek at this.
And like each day there's only 3 laps that they race because they're going around the entire, it's like Nuremberg ring size, I believe.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
And it's like some of the tightest roads in the world that are being just absolutely hammered by these bikes. It is wild. It is really entertaining. But sadly, there are a large amount of people that get severely injured or their lives are lost because of this race. So, and like, that's not something we like ever want. That's not something that we root for. And it's really sad. But, thank you for these people that are racing and putting their lives on the line. I genuinely mean that.
Yeah.
But we're really hoping for just a clean Isle of Man TT. We have MotoGP at the end of the month on the 30th. But last piece of news, Marc Marquez set to join Factory Ducati, which in F1 terms, for the people that like F1 more, this is Hamilton to Ferrari. This is a Hamilton to Ferrari situation. So
yeah.
It's pretty big. It's pretty wild. That concludes On the Gravel for us this weekend. When is the next race?
Next race is the Spanish GP, 2 weeks from yesterday.
2 weeks from yesterday. Thank you, Oliver. If you would like to do your thing with the outro.
I'll do my thing. Okay. You know what? We're going to change it up this week.
Boy. More work for me.
Subscribe this side of my head. This might be the exact same way we do it every time. Last week's video, this side of my head. That's going to be the left side of my head for you guys. Subscribe on this side of my head. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in for us.
Later.
See you next time, y'all.